Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taormina.
Welcome to OAA Now. Here I'm Sammy Taormina, blog around the OAA, the host of Last Seat Brain Cells, and the host between Taormina's and Orion Television. I'd like to welcome those watching on the local voice on SoundCloud and those watching at Orion Television. This week here we got a special guest here. We got the coach of the Adams Highlanders, Coach Joe Malburg. Coach, thank you for calling in this week here on the podcast.
No problem, Sammy. Great to be with you.
Let's talk about, we got a couple of things I want to talk to you about, obviously. We're going to talk about your team. We're going to talk about your district. We're going to also talk about everything going around girls basketball. Also, we're going to talk about boys basketball, especially your district with the boys. Let's begin with our first topic here. Let's talk about about your team this year. You guys right now are 6-6 right now. You guys are sitting right now. I think you're tied for third in the blue division. So, recap how everything's been going for you guys this season.
Well, it's been an up and down season in one sense, but mostly a positive season for us. We've been battling injuries from the start, but we've had a ton of young players or new to varsity players step up and really kind of fill in those situations. And we're really happy with where we're at right now. We're hoping to get a few of our core players back for the stretch run. And even if we don't, I still feel like we're in a position to contend like we have it in recent years. So we're really happy over at Adams.
So there's been one big injury I've been wanting to talk to you about, and that's the injury to Faith Zolas. Talk about how that injury's been, and it's been impacting you guys.
Well, Faith's working really hard to get back. She's obviously a really important player to us, an all-league player as a freshman and an all-league honorable mention player last year, even though she battled some injuries last year. She's just such an important player to us and such a hard worker and such a motivator to her teammates. So without her, without any certainty of when she'll be back, we're kind of adjusting to playing without her, and we've kind of gotten to that point now. But obviously, any team that would be without a player like that would really be missing her. So as much as we'd love to have her back, we're just kind of adjusting to life without her, and we're looking forward to her getting back and finishing her career real strong over at Adams.
And when you look at, of course, some impact players, I know that we've talked about several impact players at Adams. For OA Nation, can you tell OA Nation what impact players that have really been helping you guys throughout this past season?
Yeah, well, it starts with our senior class. We've had Molly Snook, one of our senior guards, and another one, Kaylee Huffman. They're both second-year players as varsity players, four-year program players. They're both coming off double-digit scoring efforts against Troy Athens in a win, and they've really stepped up their game this year. These were players that were maybe like borderline varsity players as freshmen, if that, and they've just gotten better and better every year, and they're kind of what our program is all about. And beyond them, three juniors have had really, really big years for us. Our point guard since her freshman year, Layla Tomzak, has, anybody who's watched her knows her impact goes way beyond the stat sheet, but she's having her best statistical season. She's also dealing with a few minor injuries, but that's mostly due to the fact that she's a real high-level athlete who competes in multiple sports year-round. But we think she's going to be good for us down the stretch, as she has been all season. And then Nadia Hepner and Reagan Jarrell have both this is their second year on varsity, and they were both key players in the rotation last year, but now they're both averaging close to 10 points a game and bringing a lot of other things to the table as rebounders and playmakers. So we're really fortunate in that we've had players who've upped their games big time this year to kind of fill in the spaces by some of our injured players.
And when you look at, of course, the play, obviously, you look at, of course, the stretch, getting those players back, and it's going to be a big time help for you guys going forward. Talk about, obviously, that there's going to have to be some changes when you look at once you get those players back. So talk about, how it's your job to make sure that, with the chemistry surrounding this team.
Well, it is my job, but I'm really lucky in that our kids take great care of that for me. Our chemistry is fantastic, and it has very little to do with me. It's that we have kids who really like each other, respect each other, and are working towards common goals. And even though it has opened up more playing time for more people, I know everybody in our team would love to have everyone back and healthy and be at our full strength. You know, when we set out on this season, we envisioned a 10-player rotation at least most nights. We haven't been able to do that because of the injuries, but we're prepared for, you know, what we built around in the summer was having a deeper team, and what we built around in the preseason was having a deeper team. So we feel like we'll only be stronger when we get people back, and we'll have the players who, you know, go from being primary players, you know, to maybe having some more help in that role. I think it's only going to make things easier for them, and they're going to thrive even more.
Talk about the impact of program strength. Obviously, your sub-varsity program, you got a JV program, you got a freshman program. Talk about how important of having 3 programs is over at a school like Adams.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate to see freshman basketball in Oakland County becoming more and more of a coin toss than where you used to assume. If you had a Class A school, you'd have programs at all 3 levels, or teams at all 3 levels of your program. We only have, I believe, 3 teams in our league that have all 3 levels right now, which makes scheduling a little bit more difficult. But for us, we want, or I want at Adams, and I think it's what the school wants as well, to give an opportunity to as many students as possible to have the high school sports experience. So even if you're not, you know, if basketball isn't your first sport, we want you to be able to come here and play and compete and make yourself a more well-rounded athlete and get that experience of playing with your friends, you know, in high school while you still can. So it's very important to us to keep 3 levels. Our numbers are a little bit down this year between injuries and the lower participation at the freshman level, but we're still able to field 3 competitive teams. And that's really important to us, because it's not just about, you know, the core varsity players or the people who want to go on and play basketball in college. It's about giving a great experience to as many students as possible at a great school like Rochester Adams.
And when you look at a course, you know, and talk about the middle school program. Obviously, you got Van Heusen and you got West. I mean, like, talk about how important those 2 middle schools have been to the success of Rochester Adams.
Yeah, it's one of the unique challenges at a 3-district or 3 high school district like Rochester schools. You know, you have school players coming from multiple feeder schools. We don't have school of choice, so that's where we get our players from, is our middle schools. We try to develop it with a camp program, and trying to be active and involved. We're lucky enough to have our JV coach, Justin Howard, also be one of our middle school coaches at Van Heusen. And we've had good relationships with the other coaches at both at West and the lower levels at Van Heusen. And that's just essential to, if you want to continue to be competitive in such a tough league like the OAA, you have to start developing those players before they get to high school, or at least give them opportunities to develop themselves. And that's what we try to do at Adams.
And then let's talk about the division. Obviously, you're in the blue this year. Right now, I think you're sitting tied for 3rd right now behind Avondale and Berkeley. So I'm going to give you I'm going to break down each team and what you think about each team. I mean, obviously you've seen these teams before. So let's talk about Avondale. I mean, obviously Avondale right now is leading your division right now. So what's your thought process when you look at the Yellow Jackets?
Just a very talented team that has really come together well this year. They're extremely well coached. When we played them, we played a really good game against them in terms of breaking down our film. The quality of shots we got were good. The quality of our defensive possessions were good. They were able to beat us simply by making really difficult shots consistently at a high level. They shot over 50% from 3 against us. And really, again, I think they're an extremely well-coached team, and they work really well together, but the individual talent is kind of the catalyst for, I think, their success. They have, you know, I'm blanking on her name, Amaria, I think, number 3.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yep. She's just a really great athlete and a really skilled player. And she's one of those players where, you know, getting ready for her, I kind of noticed that she was streaky, and that, not that she has like bad moments, but she kind of picks her spots to take over games. And she really did that against us. We did a great job, I thought, against her in the first half. I think she had 4 points. And then the third quarter comes around and she makes 5 out of 6 shots and scores double digits in a quarter. And kind of, goes from a really close game to them having almost a double digit lead because of her play. And then Sasha and Morgan behind her as perimeter players, or with her as perimeter players. Morgan's shooting the ball better than she ever has, and just having a really great season. I'm really happy for her, knowing her like I do. And Sasha the future is very bright for her as a sophomore. Just that, and then they have also 22. I'm blanking on her name as well, but tremendous post player for them that's new to the squad this year. And she's kind of given them that balance between their perimeter scoring and their interior scoring and rebounding. And I think, I don't believe they've been beat yet in our league. And it's going to, there's some teams that definitely can beat them. Berkeley took them to overtime. We gave them a tough game. Some other teams I think will be difficult matchups for them. But if they play their best game, they're going to be really tough to beat.
Let's talk Berkeley. I mean, obviously, you had a really tough loss to them down at their place. It was 27-24, I believe was the score. So what's your thoughts on Coach Clay Shaver's team and the Bears?
We're super familiar with Berkeley, not only because most of their core players, their top 5 players have been there for, 2, 3, at least one of them 4 years as a varsity player. And they've been in our league. Whether we were in the white with them, we moved to the blue with them. So they've been in our league every year since I've been here. And they're really a tough out because any one of their starting 5 can hurt you on any given night. Their post players, whether it's Innocent or whether it's Kaylee, they present problems with their length, and their skill level has really gone up a notch this year from their sophomore year to their junior year. And then they have a trio of guards, senior guards who have got at least 3 years experience with Haley and Maddie and Aubrey or Audrey. I hope I don't get her name wrong. Yep. Weingarten. But they just they come at you in waves. They're super athletic. They play tremendous defense. Our score was very low scoring against them. Most of their games are pretty low scoring because of the defense that they play, and we're really looking forward to playing them again because it's always such a great challenge. They're such a good team, and they give us such a good game every time we play them.
I'm looking forward to that one. That should be a really interesting game over at Rochester between you guys. I mean, that should be a fun matchup, to say the least. Let's talk now. Let's talk A&T. I mean, obviously, A&T, this has been a team where I've been just really, saying good offense, defense a little bit, suspect. So what's your thought process on A&T?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think their defense is necessarily a weak link for them. It's just they play at such a high pace. Their games are always going to be higher scoring because they force you to play so many possessions. And they're so dangerous offensively, you have to score to keep up with them. But yeah, they're definitely more of a risk-taking defense than a team like Berkeley, who's just going to make it hard on you on every possession. At Southfield, I don't know that there's a team that has a better inside-outside punch than they have. With their 2 lead players there. They shoot the 3 well, but they're really dangerous in transition and getting to the basket. It seems like program depth is getting stronger and stronger for them. I'm not really surprised with Coach Q over there that that's happening. So, we were lucky enough to beat them. Last year, we played them twice. We had the lead in the fourth quarter both times, and they prevailed because of that inside-outside punch that they have. This year, we were lucky enough to get them the first time around, but we know it's going to be a real battle when we go to Southfield in a couple weeks.
Let's talk Athens. Obviously, Coach J.C. Clump's team. This year, I've called Troy Athens a Scooby-Doo team because you don't know what you're going to get with them. So, talk about Coach J.C.'s team at Athens.
Yeah, just it's the easiest team to talk about because we just came off a game with them last week. A really competitive game. We were able to get who I think 2 of their key players are with Alex and Yasmin, their 2 post players. We were able to get them in foul trouble, which made it a lot easier on us than it would have been without that. but they're talented from especially they present probably the best combination of post players in our league. Alex and Yasmin can both step outside and shoot the three, and they can really hurt you in the post and on the glass. And then they've got a couple of guards. The player that led them against us was Kata, who's one of their guards, number one. Had a tremendous game against us, couldn't miss a shot. If we left her open, she knew she was making it. We knew she was making it, but she was still able to get those shots off. And they came back, we built like a 17-point lead at one point in that game, and they came back and cut it all the way to 3, which is a testament to the coaching staff there. That's another team we've played. This is the 7th time, I think, now I've played them in my 4 years at Adams. So we're very familiar with them and what they do, but it's impressive to watch as the players change, that the mentality doesn't. They're a team that just does not quit, and they're a tough out for everybody.
I remember that game with Athens against Troy. I don't know if you watched that game.
Sure.
But Troy Athens built a big lead against Troy, and then once Diamond Prince got hurt, that's when Troy made the run. So that kind of tells you how tough that that game was. So when you look at Troy Athens, you played them in the summer. You played them in the you played them from how familiar? Obviously, we talked about this. How familiar are you when it comes to Troy Athens' system and schemes?
Yeah, probably about the same as they're familiar with ours. And like you said, we play in their summer league. Stacy does a great job putting that on. And we run into them at team camps or leagues or whatever. So we're very familiar. We know their personnel. We know what they're going to run. I know they know our personnel. A lot of the girls on our team are close with some of the girls on their team. They were taking pictures together after the game. So it's a fun rivalry because, it's going to come down to whoever has the best night that night, whoever shots fall, because it's not going to be easy for anyone. So it's always a really fun game and a really great atmosphere when we play them.
And you get to go play them at Rochester. You get to go play them at home this time around. I mean, because I think didn't you guys play at Athens the first time?
Yeah. We have 2 traditions. I always joke with Stacy a little bit when we get together. Basically, our 2 traditions are, one of our games will have a threat of weather, and it will either be canceled or almost canceled, like our last one was when neither team had school that day. And then the second game of the year always seems to be either our senior night or their senior night. So we've done 2 at their place, and they've done 1 at our place, and they're going to have a second one at our place this year when we play them for senior night this season. So it's kind of just the way things work out in the OAA sometimes.
Let's talk Harper Woods. I mean, this is a game you and I talked about like exclusively, and it's like anytime you go down there, anytime teams go down there, like you tend to get like a little bit like the fouls have been misguided or everything like that. That happened to you over at Harper Woods. You guys ended up losing that one 45-42. So what's your thoughts on the Pioneers?
I like their team. They're struggling for numbers. They've had some issues this year. I talked with their coach, but the players that they do have are really committed to their team, and they have a couple of players leading the way who are really good athletes. And they got us because they stayed extremely aggressive attacking the rim, and they got to the line. Lanaya West, senior guard for them. She's been on varsity since she was a freshman. Or I'm sorry, junior guard for them, but she's been on varsity since she was a freshman. She was 9 for 9 from the foul line against us. So obviously we made a mistake in making any contact with her because she wasn't going to miss. And then Tiana Gillette had a really nice game against us. She's one of the best athletes in the league. When she gets into the paint, she's extremely tough to stop because of her speed and her ability to kind of finish from the mid-range or get all the way to the rim. It's a game that, anytime you lose a close game, you think of if we did this or we did this or this happened, we would have won the game. But all the credit goes to them for that win because they made the plays that they needed to, and they were very good at the line down the stretch. I think they're going to be a tough out for anyone. They don't have the best, kind of like us. They don't have the best record right now. I'm sure they would like to have a few more wins, but if you look through their schedule, there's not a lot of games where it's like, they were an easy victory for their opponents. So it speaks to the depth of our league and how there's really not a lot of easy games.
And they got a tough district over there. I mean, like they got South Lakes in there. I mean, they got and Warren Regina's in there. They got a really tough district when you look at that. I mean, like for them. And then our last team to talk about in division is North Farmington. What's your thoughts when you look at the Raiders? I mean, they're a very young team under Coach Michael Lawlin. Talk about, talk about the Raiders, what you've seen from afar.
Yeah, well, they're coming up. They're our next opponent, so we're taking a hard look at them right now. They're much improved from the start of the season. Like you said, they're very young. They have the freshmen and sophomores playing huge roles for their team. They don't have, a lot of returners in the junior or senior class who have experience. So they're kind of turning over for the next round of Raider basketball. But we've seen them. They played us tough for most of our game. We were able to make a run late and kind of pull away, but they were certainly no pushover. They played Athens tough in a game recently. They had a nice win. I just got done watching against Corunna. They had a nice win against Walled Lake North. And you're seeing that. This was something I went through 2 years ago when I had two freshmen in my starting lineup. You improve so much week to week, game to game, even when you're that young, because that experience is so valuable. So we fully expect them to come into Adams and give us a heck of a game, playing with more and more confidence as the year has gone on.
And then let's look at, of course, your district. I mean, obviously, this has been something I've wanted to talk to you about is the girls' district here. You'll be at Rochester this year. It's virtually almost the same district as last year, with the exception of adding Utica in there. So, right. What's your thought process when you look at this district? From seeing your arch rivals in here to, and then three Macomb County powers in this district.
Yeah, well, we've talked in the past, and I'm a Romeo graduate, and my background is in the MAC, and I've lived on Van Dyke or right off Van Dyke most of my life. So you have Eisenhower and Romeo and Utica, which are all schools that are right off Van Dyke. And then obviously the three schools in our district. So there's not going to be any surprises with what the teams do, but boy, oh boy, is there not going to be anything easy. Utica and Romeo, if you look at their records, you might think they're not good teams, but if you've seen them play, they're not easy outs by any stretch. And then, with Eisenhower, they might be the best team in the MAC this year, or at least I think they're definitely one of the top.
I definitely want to talk Ike with you for sure. I want to go more in depth with you on Eisenhower because they're a team that, and also we're going to talk Rochester and Stony Creek and also some Romeo, Utica, but the team I really want to break down with you is Utica Eisenhower. Obviously, You beat them last year in the district, the first round. That went overtime. Now, with Eisenhower, they had a new coach. Obviously, the addition of the Turner twins. So talk about what you see with Utica Eisenhower from afar.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really broke them down yet. I've watched a few of their games just out of interest. Like you said, new coaching staff. It's the second biggest school, or it might even be the biggest in enrollment now in the MAC conference. So there's never a shortage of talent, but boy, did they have an influx of talent come in this year. I believe they have 5 freshmen that are contributing on the varsity level. You mentioned the twins, who are kind of the headliners, but there's talent up and down that roster, and they were good from the start. But I recently watched one of their more recent games in the last couple of weeks, and they've gotten a ton better since before Christmas. They're going to be a very tough out. And what's going to be, I won't spoil it because I know you want to get to the other teams, but it's really a district where I think legitimately people would not be surprised if 4 or 5 different teams won it, or at least not be shocked. There might be some upsets along the way, but there's just a lot of really good teams. No great team where you're thinking, this is going to be a state champion, but there's a lot of teams that can win a district and maybe even a regional or a quarterfinal in our district this year.
And then obviously let's talk Stony Creek. Obviously, you guys hung tough with the Cougars last season. Now you look at Stony Creek, they don't have Sarah LaPrairie anymore. So when you look at the Cougars, what's your thought process when you look at Coach Columbus Williams' team and the Cougars?
I mean, they keep winning, right? Obviously they're doing something right. They present when we played them, our games with Stony Creek have been fantastic. Unfortunately, we haven't won any of them the last couple of years, but we've played really great competitive games with them. I really enjoy the challenge. Our kids really enjoy the challenge. They really want to get a win against them. But what presents a problem for our team and pretty much every team is the length that they have. They have 3 or 4, maybe even 5, girls who are 6 foot tall that are in their rotation, 6 foot tall or taller. And the length that they have just makes all of your shots something you can't practice against. All of a sudden, you have to adjust the angle on your shots. You have to pull up a little sooner. You don't have as much time on a closeout. So they're, and in addition to that, they have Merrick, who has been there 4 years and has gotten better and better every single year. And now is really kind of, at least, against us, I haven't watched all their recent games. She really stepped up as a leader and made a bunch of huge plays down the stretch, kind of filling in for what they lost with Sarah LaPrairie, who was there the last 4 years. So I think Stony Creek is nobody. Let's just put it this way: nobody's going to look at that game as an automatic win, no matter how good they are. There's not a team out there that could just assume they're going to beat them, and I think they're going to be a real tough out in our district.
And they also got the Avash sisters too. They got
right.
triplets. You know what I mean? When you look at it, I mean, obviously their play has been really instrumental for Stony Creek, especially on that defensive end.
Yeah, it's a family affair over there, right? They got the 3 sisters in that family, and then they got the 2 Fulkerson sisters playing. And they're all present problems with their length and their skill. I don't want to minimize it and say they're just tall, because they're not. They're good basketball players who happen to be tall, so that makes them even more dangerous.
And speaking of a team that you're going to have to deal with, of course, you get to go play in the Crosstown Showdown this year at Oakland University. You guys get to play Rochester this year. Obviously, we all know the story of Alex Max and Kylie Robinson. When you look at Rochester, obviously they've been through a coaching transition. I mean, but a lot of success still runs through Alex Max and the Falcons.
Well, it's been like 7 weeks since they've lost a game, so they're again another team that's obviously doing something right. Size again is at the core of what they do. Any coach who had 2 talented 6-foot players like they do would build around that, obviously. But now you're seeing more and more of the, again, not to minimize them, but the supporting players or the role players are really stepping up and showing their own ability and how valuable they are to the team winning. So I definitely think, just like I said about Eisenhower, just like I said about Stony Creek, it's going to be real hard for anybody to knock off Rochester. If they do it, they're going to have to play a really good game.
And then, of course, we talked Romeo earlier, obviously. We know how good that Coach Ron LeBlanc's done over there. He's done a really good job there at Romeo. So talk about your alma mater a little bit. You know what I mean? Obviously, how their program's been.
Well, they played as tough of a schedule to start the season as anybody. And so, again, their record doesn't reflect their ability, in my opinion, at all. I think they're going to do real well in their league. I think they're 2-1 in their league right now. And I think they're going to be real tough for anybody to beat. I think, they're going to contend for that MAC White title. And then, they played Eisenhower tough. I watched that game. The final score doesn't reflect how close that game was. It was like a 5 to 8 point game at most for 80-90% of it. And then, team pulled away late. But so if we think Eisenhower is one of the best teams in the MAC, we know that Romeo is at very least capable of playing with the best teams in the MAC. So I think they're a really tough out. They got a shooter who is real tough to prepare for because she doesn't need any space or any time. She has one of the quickest releases I've seen. We scrimmaged with them, and she really beat our team up with her jump shooting and her play off of ball fakes whenever we had an over aggressive closeout. So I think Romeo's another team that you have to look out for in our district, and certainly they have to look out for in the MAC White.
And then Utica, obviously. Talk about what you've seen with Utica. I know they've been struggling this year a little bit. So what's your thoughts on the Chieftains?
Yeah, they're a team that, without knowing exactly what's going on there, I just know from the outside looking in that they've also had, kind of like us, but maybe to a even greater extent, they've dealt with bad luck with injuries. They've kind of had to readjust their team on the fly. And I just know that, that's a program that you can't look past. They were a state championship program when I was in high school. They've had some really good years to follow up, and with Jay following up on Tom McDonald, I think if you look past Utica, it's to your own mistake. We're going to catch them near the end of the regular season, and I'll have a much better idea what they're looking like this season going into the district then. But like I said, it just makes, by adding them to an already tough 5-team district, it just makes one more obstacle to overcome to win that one.
And it's not going to be an easy district. I mean, like, writing, when you look at it here in my column, I do write a little bit of a preview insight of the district, and it's not going to be an easy district. I mean, like, to say the least, I mean, you're going to have to earn that district, you know what I mean, if you want to make some noise heading in that next round.
Yeah, whoever wins it, they're going to have gone through multiple really tough games to get it, and then they're good. But I think the benefit of that will be for whoever does emerge, they will be battle tested and they will be ready for that regional.
All right, now let's go from the girls' game. Let's talk the boys' game. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about the boys' side of things. I mean, like, how, first of all, let's talk about Adams and boys. I mean, obviously this year they're struggling a little bit. How's the relationship between you and Coach Isaiah Novak?
Isaiah is a fantastic coach, and he's a great person to work with. We're doing an event coming up together that's the boys and girls program, community service event on Friday at Rochester Adams at 6:00. If anybody wants to come out, it's for Dutton Farm. It's a basketball game. We have a charity raffle and some things going on. And it's one of the things I'm really grateful about being at Adams, is that it is a community affair. It's a family affair. We all kind of work together. We had the boys' parents come out for a game for us, for the girls' team, the entire varsity team, and the parents of the varsity players, and then we return the favor to them. We're both investing in each other's success. And I know from watching the way Isaiah runs practice, watching how his kids prepare and how they respond to him, that he's going to continue to have success at the program. This has been a tough year for them because of how tough their league is, but if you go watch their team, you know how good they are, you know how much individual talent they have and how well they play together. And nobody, like we talked about with some of these other teams, nobody's going to look past Rochester Adams, even in one of the toughest leagues in the state, and say that's an easy win. So real proud to be affiliated with Isaiah and the boys program.
I want to get your thoughts on the Red there and boys. I mean, like, I know that you've been focused on the girls' game, but when you look at that division, you look at teams like Clarkston, North Farmington, I mean, West Bloomfield, Groves, I mean, like, Avondale. I mean, like, what is your thought process when you look at those teams within the Red? What is your thought process when you look at that division? You're saying, like, oh my goodness gracious. Then you know what I mean? And then you think about it, it's like, going like, man, it's like you're playing a top team week in, week out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I look at their schedule and I'm not jealous. Certainly not jealous of the schedule that our boys team or any of the boys teams in the Red have to play. But that's the goal. You mentioned Avondale and the previous coach at Adams, who's now at Avondale,
Jared Thomas.
Yeah, with Jared Thomas. When we talked about it, that was his entire goal, was even at Adams, was to get up to the Red to play those type of games, because nothing prepares you for the playoffs better than that. Playing high level teams and night after night and not being able to ever kind of let your guard down, that gets you ready for what you're going to have to do in the playoffs. Because even if you have an easy district, and that rarely happens nowadays, but even if you do, when you get to the regional round, every team is good. Every team expects to win those games. And I don't think there's a public school league in the state that prepares teams better for the playoffs than the OAA Red. And
let's talk about the district here for the boys' side. I know I've been wanting to break this district down with you for about a month now. Get your thoughts on this. I want to start off with I know the district's over at I think it's at Rochester this year. The boys' side of things. I know the girls, I think, are at Rochester as well.
Girls are at Stony Creek.
Oh, I apologize for that. My apologies.
Nope.
Let's look at these. Let's start with the OA teams here. Let's look at Rochester. I mean, obviously, you look at the Falcons. They beat Stony Creek without two of their best players, in Max Mull and Jake Tandy. So talk about, in your eyes, the impression of like how Coach Nicobola has done with that team over at Rochester.
Yeah, they've I think they've exceeded expectations this year. Maybe not internally, but from people like me who don't know that much about them, looking from the outside. Being at Adams, Adams has had kind of a stranglehold on the intra-district rivalry since I've been here, but that's definitely changed this year with Rochester stepping up and with Stony Creek playing a great game against them earlier. I know that the boys are looking forward to the crosstown showdown, but watching this winning streak that Rochester is on right now, you start to wonder, like, what is their ceiling? What is their potential? Because they're winning these games and they're not winning pushovers. They're winning close and competitive games. They went to overtime with Royal Oak a couple weeks ago and pulled that one out. And I think that's a sign, not just of a talented team, but a team that's really coming together and hitting their stride. So I think Rochester, like I said, maybe people weren't sure what they were going to be this year. But I think by the end of the year, they're going to be at least a 15-win team, and they're probably going to be a real threat in the district.
And they're really close. Look at their game back at Pontiac, and then Olympia Hills is right there with them. So that blue championship race is right there for them for the taking.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's one of the goals, but not the main goal for them. But yeah, they've put themselves in a position where every success is on the table in the home stretch for them.
And then let's bring up Stony Creek. Obviously we talked about Stony Creek. Almost a similar boat as you guys. Let's talk about what's your thought process when you look at the Cougars, the Cougar boys.
Yeah, well, the one game I saw them live was when we played at Stony. We had a boys-girls doubleheader early in the season, and I don't know their personnel by name, but they had a guy who went off, a shooter who went off and had
Tyree Smith. I remember that.
Yep. Yeah. One of the best games I've seen live this year at the boys level. I saw their overtime game, parts of their overtime game with Rochester. That was also, that was back way before Christmas. That was a great game. And that, if we're talking about getting to district time, I think I don't know if they won or lost another close game with Rochester recently, but obviously the three schools in the district are all going to be going into those games, Rochester, Stony Creek, and Adams, thinking that they're going to win, or thinking that they can win, and maybe believing that they should win. So that usually leads to a really great basketball for the fans, if stressful basketball for the coaches.
Let's not talk about the Macomb County teams. Let's start with Utica Eisenhower, because I want to go Utica Eisenhower, Utica, and then your Alamana Romeo. We got a lot to talk about with Romeo there. But talk about Utica Eisenhower in your eyes.
Well, I honestly have not seen them live this year, other than some highlights of their recent game against Romeo that Romeo was able to pull out late. I don't, so I really don't have a lot that I can really say on them, other than the fact that since I was playing in high school, that's a program that even on their down years, they're good. Even they're competitive. I don't think they've left the white division. They've either been in the red or the white division for about 25 years now. So that speaks to the program strength over time. I know they have a losing record. I don't know what it is, but I know they have a losing record this year. But again, that's probably more of a product of their schedule than it is anything else.
Utica, what's your thoughts on the Chieftains?
Um,
we lost Coach Malburg for a minute there. Let me get him back here. I got him back here. We're getting him back here. We're getting him back here. So it was very interesting here. Talking to Utica here. So I'm getting him back here. So we're working on that here. So when I look at Utica, so it'll be interesting to see here. Kind of lost connection here for a minute here.
Your call has been.
We kind of lost connection here with Coach Malburg here for a minute here. We're hoping to get him back here. On air here. Obviously, we're in the process of talking Utica basketball here with the boys side of things, but so we're in the process of getting him back here. So hey,
Hello?
back here. I don't know what happened there.
Oh, sorry. I don't know what happened. Where did I lose you?
Utica boys.
Okay, so we were talking about Utica. I don't know a ton about them this season. because I haven't seen a lot of them. I do know it's a rebuilding year. I started talking about, I don't know how much you got, about their game last year, their district final last year when they beat Adams, and one of the best games I've ever seen. Like I said, it's a rebuilding year for Utica. They mostly have, most of their players that were in their rotation last year, I think all but one were seniors. So they're not maybe ready to compete for a league or district title this year, but I do know whoever gets them in the first round and any subsequent rounds, Dave Hinkle's going to have Utica prepared to give them a tough game, if nothing else.
And then your alma mater, the Romeo Bulldog boys basketball team. You look at Romeo, I know you've watched him from far in between. I mean, like, they've struggled early on. We've talked about the history of Romeo basketball, especially from 2019 on. They've only won two district games. So what's your thought process when you look at the Bulldogs from afar?
Always a talented team. Another team that since I've been there has stayed in the red, in the blue, and the white division, the top two divisions. I don't know a ton about what they're trying to do this season. I do know that they present problems with athleticism, and that they also have a player who can get shots and make shots at the end of games, which is what you really need in those close, tough district games, is somebody who you can kind of lean on a little bit to make sure that your team gets a good shot in those late possessions. So, like I said, I saw their game against Eisenhower. It was a really good competitive game. I think those teams are tied and kind of in the middle of the white division right now. So I think, without having them seeing them play against the Rochester schools this year, because I haven't, I don't know how they match up, but I kind of feel like it's, at least similar to our district. Maybe the teams aren't quite as high level in their records, but there's just a lot of teams that are gonna put up tough efforts, and it's going to be really difficult. There's not going to be any pushovers in that district. I expect a lot of close games, and it's really going to come down to who can execute down the stretch.
And when you look at the NPR right now, when you look at the standings, I know when you look at on the girls' side of things, Adams right now sits at 4th in the NPR. When you look at the NPR rankings, I mean, do you think, in your opinion, every team should be seeded in the district and not the first two seeds?
Yeah, I think I've been impressed with how the NPR's worked for seeding the top seeds. I think it's done a good job. It's created better district finals. I know there will be some teams that get sort of unfair draws. No system is perfect. But I think overall we're working towards more equity, making the regular season matter more, rewarding the teams who have the best season with buys in 5 and 6 team districts and 7 team districts, but also trying to create a situation where games are as competitive as possible, or get more competitive as you move through the rounds, which is what you want. I remember when I was first starting coaching, about 20 years ago, there was I went to a district opener. It was a first round game, and it was Saginaw Arthur Hill, who was the defending state champion, against Saginaw High School, who would win the state championship that year. And that was the first game of the playoffs. And I think that and other games like that, I'm sure there's a lot of instances people could recall where that kind of thing happened, was sort of the catalyst for them thinking we need to move these, even if they are geographical rivalries and they're going to come up early in the playoffs, we need to move them as late as possible, which is the district final. And that's what they're trying to go for, and I fully support that.
And when you look at the districts, we already talked your districts. I mean, there's a lot of other districts in the area that are just equally as tough. I mean, you really look at other districts around the area. I mean, is there any other district where, beside your own district, that you think could be one of the toughest districts in the entire state right now?
I really haven't looked in depth enough. I know in the past, in recent years, there's usually a district that involves for example, a couple of years ago, North Farmington was in it, and it had Marion, and it had Mercy, and it was just, a whole bunch of teams that traditionally have really high level programs. Those are always fun if you're not in them, because to get to see those great matchups early in the playoffs. But I haven't really targeted any one this year where I'm thinking, oh boy, that's going to be, the real bruiser district. You would probably know better than me. What's the toughest district out there?
I think when you look at the district over at I think the one at Clarkson could be very interesting. I think the one at Grand Blanc could be interesting. Or the one at Lapeer could be interesting. I really think when I look at that district over at with West Bloomby and Orchard Lake St. Mary's, that could be a really interesting, and Wall Lake Northern and Lakeland, that could be a really fun district to keep an eye on there. So those are some districts that could be really, really keeping an eye on when you look at, especially the one over at West Bloomfield with West Bloomfield, Orchard Lake St. Mary's, Lakeland, and Wall Lake Northern, with the way that those teams have been playing. That could be a really, really fun district over there.
Yeah, as long as you don't have to play in it. But yeah, that for a fan, that's a great district right there. You're going to see at minimum 3 great games in that district.
Yeah, and that should be really interesting to see. And then on the boys' side, obviously, you look at that, the kiss of that district's over at Avondale. I mean, like, you look at the teams there. Yep. You got Waterford, Mott, Clarkston, Lake Orion, Avondale. I mean, like, all 4 of those teams at double-digit wins right now. I mean, it's just an absolute brutal district when you look at that one.
Yeah, I remember a district, I think it was at Lake Orion, in boys district in 2000, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I bet like maybe 2012, where you had the undefeated Adams team, you had a 19-win Clarkston team.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
At Romeo, I think we had an 18 or 17-win regular season team, and we were lucky enough to win that district. But I mean, you talk about a bunch of 3 teams that easily could have won a lot of districts on their own, all paired, in the same bracket. But that happens sometimes, and it is unfortunate because you want the postseason to reflect your success in the regular season. But we all know the reality of it is that there's an area that has really high level basketball. You're probably going to run into a really good team before you get to the regional round.
And when you look at, these teams now, you look at the, on the boys' side particular, you look at, the Catholic League teams, you look at a team like Orchard Lake St. Mary's, you look at a team like Warren D. LaSalle, Birmingham Brother Rice. I mean, like, it's a good thing, you don't have to deal with, with the Catholic League proven powerhouse in your district or anything like that. So talk to me how important it is when you're in a district with the public school without a Catholic League team in there.
Well, I mean, it's a different game that the 2 schools are playing, right? I mean, and I know there are public schools that have found ways around if you have an open district, and I know there's other creative ways to get there, but essentially with your public league schools, you're limited by the level of involvement that the kids and the parents decide to have going up through the years. At Adams, we are blessed to have tremendous, or I have been at least blessed to have tremendous parent support. And it allows us to build a program that is at least moderately successful from a win-loss standpoint and extremely successful from a student athlete experience standpoint. Versus those high-level private schools, they're targeting these kids from a young age. I was once one of those kids that was targeted. And they're trying to bring in, as many high-level players as they can. So I'm happy. I like the public. I don't begrudge anybody for making the best choices for their kids, and I certainly don't begrudge the coaches for wanting to coach the best talent that they possibly can and build the best program. That's what we're all trying to do. But I personally like the experience of, being able to work with kids on building life skills that are going to serve them well beyond the time their basketball careers end, more so than trying to accumulate wins with kids who just met each other, a few weeks or a few months ago.
Before I let you go, Coach, what is your expectations heading into the final month of the season, getting ready for the postseason? So what is your expectations getting ready for the final month of the season?
Expectation is to continue to get better every single day. That's been our goal all season. I don't think that's a unique thing to our program, but we look at every game that we're getting ready to play as our most important game. So our game on Wednesday against North Farmington is the most important game we're going to play until the next one. And we want to continue to see growth from our young players, continue to see the leadership from our seniors and our captains, and try to get as healthy as possible so that we can kind of finish this season the way we did last season, which ultimately didn't work out exactly how we wanted. but our last 4 or 5 games of the year were probably our best 4 or 5 games of the year. So even though we came up a little short in a game against Stony, who ended up being a quarterfinal team, we didn't have to hang our heads. We could be really proud of our performance and our finish. And that's what we want this year. We want to know that when our season ends, whether it's as state champions or losing in the first round, that we've maximized our potential, and that we've gone as far as we could go, and we didn't lose a game because we weren't prepared or we didn't give our best effort. So that's the focus for these last 4 or 5 weeks. And we're really looking forward to the challenges, and we're really hoping to have the best outcome possible.
Adams coach Joe Malburg here. Thank you for calling in the podcast this week. I wish you guys nothing but the best of luck heading into the final 5 weeks of the season. Take care and God bless.
Thank you so much for all you do for OAA sports, and thank you for having me on, Sammy.
Thank you really much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Of course, Adams coach Joe Malburg here on the podcast talking about the state of the Highlanders. Let's now talk about some football news here. Obviously, we got some big news coming out of Ferndale here. They got a new football coach, and it's a very interesting one. It's a very familiar name to Ferndale. It's a really familiar name to him. I mean, so when you look at Ferndale, they do have a new coach in Donovan Jackson taking over the program. Of course, Jackson, he used to be the coach at Detroit Cass Tech, as assistant coach at Detroit Cass Tech, leading to a Division I state championship. D-Zone confirmed the move. Obviously it's a big hire for them. Jackson, of course, the Ferndale alum. He's also was in Detroit for a time. I think he was at Detroit Loyola for a time. Obviously, he's going to have a big challenge ahead of him, taking over a program. Basically, Ferndale lost a lot of talent under Coach Eric Royal. They've really been a team that, I think this is going to be an interesting move. I mean, considering, obviously you look at the Gold Division this year, a lot of new coaches coming in the program. I know they're looking for a coach over at Avondale. You got Berkeley, obviously they're going through a transition period. They got year 2 under their new coach there. Royal Oak, we know that they're going through a transition. Pontiac, obviously they had some ups and downs, but they're going to be replacing their quarterback for Coach Wendell Jefferson. So it's an opportunity for Ferndale, for Jackson to put his name on it, stamp on his program here. Obviously, program strength's a big challenge for them. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with this program. I got serious concerns when I look at Ferndale, considering everybody who they lost. So there are some question marks when I look at the Eagles going forward when it comes to Ferndale, and I think there's going to be some question marks with this team. I mean, now the hire's good. I like Jackson. I think he'll do a good job there, but he's got to build a program. I know I listened to his interview on D-Zone. Obviously with Ferndale, they're in Division II because they have the co-op with Ferndale University. So it'll be really interesting to see what direction he goes with this program. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how this does. So, so Ferndale, it's going to be interesting to see how they do, especially with Jackson taking over. Different face in the building, but very familiar face. Obviously, he was a running back and a defensive back for, but it'll be interesting to see what Ferndale does under Jackson. I think it'll be something to really keep an eye on as we head into media day come August, to see where they're at. Let's now go from football to softball. Clarkson's got a new softball coach, and Melissa Smite taking over the program. She was a JV coach last year at Clarkston. She's going to have a really interesting task turning on a program that's been 21-44 in the last 3 years. I mean, it'll be very interesting to see what Smite does. Obviously, she's got a lot of familiarity with the players. She's a Clarkson resident. Obviously, she's been coaching softball for 12 years. I got concerns, when you look at the Wolves this year, considering, last 3 years. 3 years ago, obviously, they were supposed to have their best team they've had not been for the pandemic. they got the Final Four 4 years ago, so so that'll be something to really, really watch for. With Clarkston is, can this be the right fit? And I think that's the big question I have with the Wolves is, can this be the right fit? And I think that's going to be the key going forward for Clarkston is, can they find it again? Can they be back to the Clarkston of old? That's the big question coming into the year. When you look at the division that they're in, of course, they're in the red. You obviously got Division I state runner-up Lake Orion in there. You got Oxford, who's an improving team. North Farmington's always been solid. Stony Creek's been very good. So it'll be a challenge, for them in the division, but also in the district as well. Also they got Bloomfield Hills and West Bloomfield in there as well in that division. So, but also you got in the district over at Oxford, you got to deal with, you got Kettering and Mott, but also you got Lake Orion and Oxford also in there as well. So it'll be a tall order for Clarkston. Obviously with Coach Smite taking over that program, there's a lot of familiarity there. The question for me is, you're in a produced results league, and I think for Clarkston fans, they want to see the Wolves get back to where they've been in the past. I know it's going to take time, but it's going to be interesting to see what direction Clarkston goes with this hire. So it'll be something to really, really watch for going forward. So we'll see what happens going forward with Clarkston when you look at the future of the Wolves this upcoming spring. So a lot to look at with Clarkston, and there's a lot of question marks going forward. So we'll see what happens going forward there with Clarkston. Basketball rankings, obviously, they're on my blog. I sent away for this 50 at blogspot.com. When you look at the division right now, on the girls' side, the red, I still think it's going to be Clarkston, West Bloomfield, Stony Creek, Lake Orion, Oxford. Ferndale right now, I got Ferndale right now behind Lake Orion. White, I think it's going to be White. I still think Rochester's the team to beat at their big one against Seaholm. At Rochester, Seaholm, Royal Oak, Bloomfield Hills, Troy. And then obviously in the blue we talked about with Coach Malburg, the division right now. I still think Avondale's the team to beat in that division. Berkeley's right there. Adams, I still think they're the most dangerous team in girls basketball right now at the way that they're playing. And then you look at gold. In gold, I think it's Farmington. I think Ferndale University. I like where they're at right now. Followed by Farmington, then Oak Park, and Pontiac. Then Pontiac, then Oak Park. So that's my take on the girls' side. Boys' side, the red, I still think. You got it's a toss between Clarkston, Avondale, and Groves. North Farmington right now. West Bloomfield are in that middle. Adams right now in that bottom right now in the standings. White, I still think it's Oxford, Lake Orion. Then you have Farmington, then Troy, followed by Seaholm, Oak Park, Harper Woods, and then in the blue, I still think it's going to be I think Pontiac, then Rochester, Bloomfield Hills. Then Stony Creek, and then you got Ferndale University, Royal Oak, then Southfield A&T, and then Berkeley. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens as we get ready and heading into the month of February, especially in the final stretches of the season coming up. So we'll see what happens going forward. All right, I'm going to sign off here. Make sure you follow the blog. I signed up by 4650 at blogspot.com for latest information around the OAA. I'd like to thank Adams coach Joe Malburg for calling in today on this week's edition of the podcast. I'm going to sign off here. Take care. God bless, and I'll see you all next week. Anyway, take care. God bless, and see you all next week. God bless all.